Howdy doody. Welcome to episode 197 of TDI. This is Dr. O on the horn to start per usual. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, my best friend, and Star Wars aficionado, Ricky Flicks. The Mandalorian has arrived. We're coming off the high of Andor. We're getting rid of the taste of the Book of Boba Fett. Are you ready to talk about Grogu and Din Djarin going on their latest adventure?
I have something to admit. I was like, I was waiting for the drop of the Mandalorian on Wednesday night, or sorry, Tuesday night, and I was working late and was working on a few things for work, and I was having movies on in the background, and I was like, I'm just gonna work late until the Mandalorian comes out, and we're on the East Coast, and it's like 1 a.m. It's still not out, and I'm just like, I'm like, God, that's how highly anticipated I was for this. I was ready to go, trailer ready to go, and I fell asleep at my desk. I fell asleep, and then it's like, all right, I woke back up in like an hour, and I was like, all right, I'm going to bed. But that's how high my expectations, my anticipation for this was. Especially coming off Andor, which I'm not saying I'm going to say I was surprised that it was good because I think Tony Gilroy, I think it was good. It's going to be good, but I think it's safe to say that I wasn't expecting it to be that good. So definitely the expectations season 3 Mandalorian were high.
I was a little shocked. I mean, I don't know if it's shocking, but I don't like it's just I didn't sense the hype for the Mandalorian like usual. Is it weird that I didn't even know it was releasing until I saw tweets the next day saying the Mandalorian season 3 episode 1 is now streaming? I didn't, maybe I wasn't listening closely enough to like podcasts I typically consume. I'm always looking at Twitter. So it's like, is it weird that I found that this season of Mandalorian less anticipatory than season 2?
Sorry, I saw you tweet that, and I think you're half right. I think you're half right. I think they did a poor job this past week of promoting it. Disney, in general, and Lucasfilm. I think they didn't do a good job until Wednesday night when they did that watch party with Filoni, Favreau. They had like a panel and stuff. I think Pedro Pascal showed up or something. But before Wednesday, like you didn't really hear a lot of like anticipation for it. But you did like a month ago, like
Mm-hmm.
after the Disney earnings. Disney like had a trailer out for this and a bunch of other stuff come out. But it's like, why do it so early? Like, fine, but you got to keep it up. I don't think they kept up with it. So I agree with you. But at the same time, I was like, I knew this was coming out March 1st. And I think with The Last of Us, I'm not
That
saying it's
might be
bad.
it.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's come off from its peak. I think I was ready to like see something different.
I think I'm just too locked in with The Last of Us, to be honest, because like I only go one show at a time. I have a hard time diverting my attention when I'm just looking forward to another episode during that week. And then like what I like about The Last of Us, it debuts. It's 9 p.m. on HBO Max. It's on Sunday night HBO. I know it's going to be there. I don't have to worry about staying up late, worry about waking up the next day and potentially being spoiled because we have to worry about keeping up with the latest movie news with the checkup with yours truly, Dr. O. But I just feel like I wasn't properly prepared. I still watched this episode. I don't think I was that ecstatic about it. I know it has like a 88% Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was more of like a return to the norm when it comes to The Mandalorian. It was like we're coming off Andor, this political thriller, that one that did shockingly well with both audiences and critics, at least for those who watch the show and for those diehard Star Wars fans. But like The Mandalorian, it's just like it's a totally different flavor of Star Wars, and that's what I gained from watching this. And I kind of prefer the Andor's method, just because it was I don't it just felt
What's Andor's method? Like, what do you mean by
and
that?
like because it's more of like it's almost like a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. Like it's almost less based on action, more based on like reading the characters, the decisions they make. While The
Strategy.
Mandalorian is like you're looking at this episode, like, oh my god, did you see that sequence with like this sea monster that's like a half alligator, half
That was sick.
dinosaur?
That
How
was sick.
did you like this space battle that happens, like with these space pirates and the tension that's built before that? Like there is just a different type of feel for these two shows. Did you feel that impacted your viewing experience whatsoever?
I think we know what we're gonna get though with the Mandalorian. So like this episode, I kind of knew it was gonna be like this. This is the third season for a reason. So it's not like it changed my viewing experience. But let's say it was season one, like we've never seen the Mandalorian, and that was the first episode coming off of Andor. Then yeah, I would be a little confused. But we're just being honest. You mentioned it in your rant there. Not a lot of people watch Andor, but a lot of people watch The Mandalorian.
Oh
So this
yeah,
is
it is
obviously
the thing in Star Wars.
right. So I think that's fine. I honestly think it's fine. I think what the episode was, I'm fine with, but it did not match my expectations or anticipation levels. Thank God I went to bed instead of clicking on or staying up till 3 a.m. to try to watch this on the East Coast. Not worth it. Not worth it at all. But still wasn't bad.
And the pacing is just so different. You know, it's just like the like Andor, you'll take place in basically two settings throughout an entire episode. Here you were jumping from planet to planet, you're being reacquainted with certain characters.
Welcome back.
Andor, you're just like getting to know these new characters, but also like they have some type of like established lore at the same time that you have some familiarity with. Um, yeah. So I guess initial reactions here, Ricky Flex. It seems like you were excited to have the Mandalorian back. Did this episode live up to your expectations with its newest season?
It was a nice welcome back. I think the first sequence was the best thing that came from the episode. Because like you just said, like we watched the show for the action sequences and cute Grogu. We don't necessarily watch for the thriller that it could be. I just think that this episode, like, sure, I think that first sequence was great. I liked the sea monster. It looked great. I think it did. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it was just like reintroductions to Carl Weathers, um, the true old style Mandalorians, the Bo-Katan, and like basically saying like, hey, by the way, like we've been gone for a bit. Just a reminder, he wants to go back to Mandalore, and then just a couple, time filler stuff that happened during in between. He needs to go get a droid. He needs to get a part for the droid. That he runs into pirates, one that looks like a swamp type thing. It's just like I don't know. It didn't live up to the expectations for me, but it's just the first episode. A welcome
Ye-
back.
It definitely felt like a welcome back, even though like we did have between season 2 and season 3, we had the interruption of the Book of Boba Fett when the Mandalorian absolutely hijacks that entire season of television because of how electric he is compared to the lame story that was the Book of Boba Fett. And like a character that so many people were anticipating on seeing and having their own project ends up being like basically pushed aside and basically saying like we don't really care about you whatsoever. Like you are now out, you are old news. The Mandalorian is what people actually have a passion for, and that was the best part of the season, of the
Easily.
Book of Boba Fett. And I don't know, I think that first scene did do something for me because it almost like it took me by surprise because I thought it was gonna be a flashback sequence of Din Djarin
Yes,
of the Mandalorian.
it got
I
me.
thought it was gonna be him being like crowned a Mandalorian and he can never take off his mask and he's going to have to prove himself amongst all these veteran Mandos and he's going to have to take down this alligator beast sea monster like Star Wars creature that we've seen in past Star Wars lore, like or at least like a concept of it. But we are surprised to notice this is actually happening in present day, and what actually basically gets the Mandos off the hook because they're getting absolutely smoked by this gator is Grogu and Din Djarin coming in on their right spacecraft and they're just shooting up this thing and saving the day. Did you think that was a flashback sequence?
I thought it was. It got me. I thought it was a flashback. They did that on purpose, without a doubt. Um, and I was thinking, like, man, this is pretty good, like a flashback sequence. Still prefer HBO's, but at the end of the day, this is a pretty good one. And then the thing comes out, and I'm expecting the little kid who's I thought was Din Djarin to come out and save the day. But no, he comes out and saves the day in present day, an adult Din Djarin. Um, I will also just say, Mandalorians, an, a, a fleet of Mandalorians can't defeat that thing. Like, how good are these warriors then? How good are these
Luke
people?
Skywalker takes that thing out on his own.
Yeah, easily. Any Jedi. These, like, anybody that's like, oh, Mandalorians are great. After seeing that, the Dave Filoni himself and Jon Favreau letting that happen shows me, okay, Mandalorians maybe aren't as good as we thought they were. I honestly, that was my initial post reaction.
They're not that strong,
Yeah, they
and
aren't.
I'm just like people like the people always fantasize, right?
Right.
Is Mandos versus Jedis, and it's just clear that Jedis would mop the floor with them. It's
Easily.
got to be more like a Luke Skywalker esque Jedi versus like 50 Mandalores. It's just like if that's what we're looking for. I think that's going to be something that's, I guess, comparable in terms of like power, that they hold. Yeah, so I also thought that kid actor was god awful. Like it's not like the Mandalorian's like good in terms of like its acting. People don't come to it as appointment television to see the latest of Pedro Pascal and how he is comparable to like Joel in The Last of Us. We are coming there for what the show knows for. It's for Star Wars lore, it's for Grogu, and we'll get into like the gimmicks and like whether we think Grogu is actually growing as a character and someone that of course has remained stagnant pretty much since season 1. I guess that's kind of revealing my thoughts about him. I think also that scene when this kid is being basically inducted to become a Mandalorian sets the scene and sets the story for season 3, because in the middle of that induction ceremony, right, he never agrees to the terms. It's
Yes.
interrupted before he says he's going to wear this mask for the rest of his life and become a Mandalorian. I think the central and overarching question for this season is going to be what makes a Mandalorian. And I think it's like that kid's interrupted, and we have this whole thing where you have Mando trying to gain redemption for taking off his mask. He wants to be accepted by this community. He wants to go to Mandalore. He wants to go to these depths of water. And he wants to make sure he's redeemed. There's also moments where he's talking to Grogu, saying, what does a Mandalore have to do aside from assassinate people, right? Aside from acting as a John Wick in space, it's more of you have to be able to navigate, right? So I think that's it's Bo-Katan, like she wants this dark saber, right? It's this dark saber. What does this really signal that you are the true leader of the Mandalorian? Like if Pedro Pascal is technically not accepted right now, but has the dark saber, what does that mean about his status? So I think this central question, especially after, if you want to incorporate the Book of Boba Fett, the spoiler alert, but like the decision that Grogu makes that he's going to become, right? He's not going to become a Jedi. So he's going to become a Mandalorian. Can he become a Mandalorian? What is that exact definition? I think that's what we're going for here.
You basically hit all the parts. I'll kind
Dude, I analyzed the crap out of that. Dude, I think I nailed it, bro.
You left me speechless, but I want to touch on something that you just mentioned. So during this episode, I was thinking, because like again, it was a welcome back. We got cute Grogu with him and the droid people, right? But near the end of the episode, I was thinking we are underutilizing Grogu. Big time. Big time, I think. And I was thinking, I still think it's one of, if not the biggest mistake besides The Last Jedi in Star Wars history, that they decided to bring Grogu back and not become a Jedi.
To revoke his lightsaber.
Yeah, I still think that's the dumbest decision on all parts from a Star Wars perspective or a money business perspective. Imagine if you got Grogu to become a Jedi, you could have a new trilogy with Grogu centered around it. And we always wanted a Yoda movie or something, right? The fans always clamored for that. And with the Acolyte, we might get something. But imagine the money that would have been made if there was a Grogu trilogy movies. Him as a Jedi, basically seeing a Yoda in his prime as the heart and soul, the center of the Star Wars universe for a decade. That would be unbelievable. That's easy. Easy money, expanding the fan base. What a mistake. That came across to me near the end of this episode. How instead of doing that, Disney thought such short term, and it's like, no, let's just have him be cute and continue with The Mandalorian season 3. How many more seasons are we going to do with this?
Ricky, let me push back. Because it is a crime that we never got to see Grogu actually wield a lightsaber, and that we probably will never see that. But I'm also taking into account the full scope of Star Wars. We are now pushing from the original trilogy with episode 6 into the sequel trilogy. Like, he can't make too much of a name for himself as a Jedi. So I think like we might see Grogu not only using the Force, but wielding guns. And we've already seen like a character like Grogu with Yoda, especially with the prequel trilogy, specifically episode 2 and episode 3. I think what they're going to have is Grogu, someone that's not typically viewed as a prototypical Mandalorian, someone that is strong with the Force, end up wielding these guns side on his side in his holsters alongside the Mandalorian, but also having the abilities of the Force, something unlike the Star Wars universe has ever seen. I think that's going to play into the theme of this entire season, that overarching question I talked about. Because eventually you're going to reach a point, and like this is a question I have for later on. Like, at what point are we going to start to see more characters from the sequel trilogy in The Mandalorian rather than the original trilogy, like we saw with Boba Fett? And that's
You're making me upset right now,
Ricky. I'm just thinking like Babu Frick is already in the Mandalorian. He's a part of this, you know. So it's like, how do we go from here? That's been like a great teasing point. A Babu Frick character, like pretty much the only redeeming quality somewhat of episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Like, I feel like you have to have this story go away from like the central part of this universe, obviously with the Skywalker saga, with a Rey, you know, and with a Ben Solo, have it go to other sectors here. I think they introduced an interesting aspect with Grief Karga, Carl Weathers' character, potentially opening up an opportunity for them to settle down. I think this is an opportunity for them to, okay, let's have this guy who's strong with the Force become a Mandalorian, go to other aspects of this universe and explore so it doesn't crash into what we already know.
You made me upset. The fact that you said the Grogu with guns and you were that excited for it.
Ricky, it's different.
You know what's different? Him actually wielding a lightsaber.
Let's get a mask on him. Let's get a Mando.
That's what I mean. Like, yes, it's different, but dude, like, a Jedi's a Jedi. We just talked about at the top of this how Mandalorians are like so much weaker than I thought. Like, dude, Jedis are so much cooler. I don't care.
You got to spice it up with Grogu, though. You got to spice it up,
dude. And it is different. And I'm gonna push back on your pushback. It is different if
inertia
became a Jedi. If he became a Jedi, we've never seen a straight line origin story that went into the Prime. We never saw that. We saw a prequel after we already had what we had, right? With Anakin Skywalker, right? But still.
The story's not about Jedis. The story's not about Jedis.
But that's my point. We don't need a Grogu in this anymore. He did his thing.
Okay, so now you're entering a whole different stratosphere here. Whether
he should have been a Jedi here, but I'm not backing down. He should have been a Jedi.
Ricky, you're gonna tell this premature Yoda, who's still in his adolescence, technically, right? How to behave. You're saying you should become you, but at the same time,
I will.
But I mean, Luke Skywalker didn't. What gives you the right to do so?
Because I'm Ricky Flicks, and I know what I want to see.
That's not what you want. I know, but like, do you want to see him as a Jedi, or do you want to see him alongside the Mandalorian, taking him under his wing, under his tutelage? I get it, but we've seen this little green guy wield a lightsaber before. We've seen this before,
and we've seen.
But Ricky, if it becomes a big enough Jedi, he's going to intersect. You have to think about the wider scope of Star Wars. So we are approaching episode 7, right? We're past episode 6. Like
You're making me
if you
angry.
figure out this guy is an absolute assassin with a lightsaber, you're like, okay, let's get this guy on the side of the resistance alongside Ray and company. You know, it's just like you can't have him be so high key. You got to stay under the radar. How do you stay under the radar? You're a Mandalorian.
But we've already had 2 seasons of that.
I know, but Ricky,
And
you
I
need
know
him a
what you're
part of the show.
saying that he's
You need
gonna.
him a part of the show, and you need him
I
with Pedro Pascal. You need him. That's why he
fine.
didn't choose to
Then they
become a
should have
Jedi.
done what they did after this season and end it there. I don't know. I just know I want to see him with a lightsaber.
You
Star
can't end
Wars
it.
is in a. Hey, we talk about it a lot. Star Wars, the universe is in a flux right now. What are they going to do for movies? They have the Taika Waititi movie, the Patty Jenkins Squadron movie, gone. What are they going to do? What's their next trilogy? Easy solution. He gets under tutelage of Luke, right? And maybe when Luke, whatever, Ben Solo happens, Grogu's only like 100. And for him, 100, he's probably like 10 years old. So by the time after the sequel trilogy that we've had with Rey, by the time that's over, he's ready to go.
It's just hard to explain away.
You could do it.
7.
You explained.
Well, like you're gonna like have him under the tutelage of Luke Skywalker for decades, and then people are gonna start asking when it comes to that sequence. Think about like questions people ask about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its sequencing. The people will be like, "What happened to Grogu?" Right when he could have helped out this resistance movement. He has to stay with Din Djarin.
You could think of something.
And it's the father-son relationship that makes this show work, Ricky Flex. It's not just what you want to see in action sequences. You have to have not only the action sequences, but the emotionality of this show is the father-son relationship. My problem with Grogu is that he is a gimmick. Like to me, it's like he's not growing as a character. We see him trying to choke out Babu Frick. He is still taking candy and using the Force to have it come to him. Like I thought we were taking steps forward actually with the Book of Boba Fett when he's making decisions on his own. He wants to be with Din Djarin. And then he saves Din Djarin and company at the end of the Book of Boba Fett. And now we see him at the episode 1 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. And he acts like he is back to being an infant and he is one that can't make decisions on his own. And then he has to have his dad tell him how to behave. Like to me, that's going backwards. You know what I mean?
Everything you said right there is correct from the emotional aspect, the father-son type relationship needed for the
Just
show.
Him popping up in the ship, like moving his head.
Yeah,
it's like we just see him. It's good enough.
That gimmick, it was also a gimmick. I just used the same lingo unintentionally. When they're just flying and it's like blue, like going like it's blue in the background. They just show him for 5 minutes. It's like I'm done. Just go to the next scene. Like why are we just showing Grogu in the little bubble? What I'm saying is they should have done that decision. Like I don't know. I just think that decision pisses me off a lot. And this episode, I was thinking about it as these sort of gimmicks that you're calling them. You're right. And I just kept thinking, like, we had the potential right there. And again, like I had a couple ideas there saying we don't need Grogu. That was all right. Maybe that was a step far here. The anger was getting to
show.
me. But I think that they could have done something where they didn't do what they did in Book of Boba Fett and that decision so
close
early.
him off from the Force.
Yeah,
close him off from becoming a Jedi.
Exactly.
But he still has the Force.
For how much longer?
Why would he lose the Force?
That's what I was thinking. So if you don't use the Force that often, I was gonna say close off. Just you naturally lose it. Like as you get older, the less you use it.
You and I are in such different spheres here, Ricky. I view Grogu as the bridge between Mandalorian and Jedis, not as one or the other.
Okay, I'm just trying to say.
Like,
I don't disagree with that either.
People want to see Jedis versus Mandalorians. You want him to take one side over the other. You're nervous about him losing the Force. He is the best. I think he's going to end up this season as the best of both worlds. He is a Mandalorian and someone that is strong with the Force like a Jedi is, And that's where I think they can go with his character to make it effective, to make it something that the Star Wars universe hasn't seen as of yet.
It's just for me, it's like when you didn't do your full training, right? You didn't do your full training. You're so young, you're going to lose the Force. That's why it's like for me, it's like they closed that off. The way you put it, I think is spot on. They closed off that path too early. So now it's like, okay, when is he not going to have the Force anymore? That's what I'm thinking. I literally am thinking that, Doctor O.
But I'm just thinking of like Luke Skywalker didn't lose the Force like
But
over
he was a
time.
full trained Jedi.
Yeah, but like he didn't use it for decades.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
when you're
he's still
fully trained,
strong
you
with
never
it.
lose it. That's different. Grogu's so young, was only trained for like a month.
It wasn't a month,
Yeah,
but
I
like
don't know. I'm just exaggerating.
Ricky. I'm pushing back. I'm not trying to be adversarial. I'm just saying like how the show is going to be most effective because you can't just keep using Grogu as a real life action figure, you know, and
Yes.
that's what
Oh my
he's
god, when they
become.
tossed him, when they tossed him, I literally rolled my eyes. I rolled my eyes. I just how bad it looked, but it was just like, oh my god, we're still doing this. Like I literally was thinking like he's a doll. We're pretending like he's still a doll. It's like no,
I,
he's more than that. He was almost a Jedi.
And I do want to move aside from Grogu as much as titillating as this conversation truly is. I want to slide over to another impactful Mandalorian character we've seen, especially from the previous season, is Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan. So Mando and Grogu go to visit their friend, looking to gain some information as they try and go to Mandalore. And obviously, you have Mando trying to redeem himself after like he is found to like be taking off his helmet, not acting like a true Mandalore. Um, Mando, excuse me, not Mandalore, it's the planet. I thought Bo Katan looked like just from her presence as an adversary of the Mandalorian, and it's someone that is not welcoming to his presence. And she is someone that is hardened, someone and almost seems like is going to act as somewhat of an anti-hero after being a form of like a sidekick or a partner of the Mandalorian in season 2 of Din Djarin. So I thought like even her like the way she's sitting, her feet like kicked up, right? The lack of emotion, right? The hardened by like the fact that she lost her crew and other Mandos. I think, and like they bring up the dark saber, how she was reluctant to admit that she doesn't have it, and she asked if Mando still has it. I think it's really setting up for Bo-Katan to be the primary antagonist, at least for the next several episodes.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the Swamp Thing guy, pirate, is going to be just a few episode adventure type villain. Bo-Katan, clearly, they end the episode with her and her on the throne with her feet kicked up and definitely pissed off. That's like a welcome back to her moment, but also like, hey, this is the big bad for this season. That was my impression. I think you nailed it when she brings up the dark saber, her tone of voice, just all villainous intent, and just by her sitting on the throne. First off, who just sits on a throne? Like, with if no one's there, who's just sitting
Well,
on
it's
the
a
throne?
castle. Whatever. It's what did he say? Castle. It's a
Yeah, yeah,
Mandalorian castle. Is that what he said?
yes,
Din
yeah.
Djarin?
I don't know. I love like it's in movies and shows. Just like, of course, they're sitting on the throne. Of course they are. But like at the end of the day, it's like, give me something more comfortable to sit on. Like during the day, if I'm by myself, like why am I just sitting
It
on
looks
this
like they're
throne?
just sitting on rocks. You know,
Yeah,
it's almost like it's similar to House of the Dragon, where it's like there's no comfortable seating there. It's just
yeah.
like
And then you're gonna
especially
get
the
sick
throne
and die
itself.
from it. The throne.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Um, I think she's going to be a force. I don't think she's going to be the big bad by the end of it because she had such a positive relationship along with Din Djarin in season 2. It
Yeah.
seems like there might be someone that's overarching, could be a connector.
Moff Gideon came up. That's
Moff
still my
Gideon
prediction.
but I think it almost was a throwaway line, like he won't be showing up here, like,
Interesting.
or it was like
That's how you
something.
took
It
it.
was something to explain away his presence, um, not felt in this episode, or it could be someone where it's like just a reminder. I think you can interpret it in two different ways there.
Yeah, I interpreted that as a reminder. I interpreted the other thing that was mentioned in that same sequence as that's a clear like, yeah, that person's gone.
You also brought up the pirate, like the pirate in that character, the makeup, the look of it, just almost was a reminder that you're back in the Mandalorian. Like when you were watching Andor, you almost got zero. You got minimal like Star Wars creatures or aliens. Here it's like you see that guy, you're like, okay, now I'm back in the Mandalorian. Aside from Andor, That's a huge difference between the two, that adjustment that you're trying to make. And as I'm watching that, I'm like, I hate this guy. Like, I think The Mandalorian always has these guys that are in makeup and they act as like these aliens, and it's hard to buy what they're selling, and you really have to like basically suspend belief, and you basically gotta just say, okay, I'll ride with you for like 10 minutes here. It's almost like the first episode of The Mandalorian when you had a creature that looked kind of similar to the space pirate, and you were just like, yeah, this guy's going to crack some corny jokes. He's not going to have the best dialogue, but you're just going to ride with it because of how badass like the Mandalorian is. And that's what it was in the beginning of this episode too, with like the Mandalorian alongside Grief Cargo, and he's just Carl Weathers, and he's just leaning on his side, just like, let me know when you want me to just like smoke these guys. That's how I knew I was back in the Mando.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think you nailed it. That guy's not gonna have great dialogue. It's just
Yeah.
not. And that's like what
Because it's not believable. Like, you can't like buy what that person's saying just based on how they look. It's just automatically corny. So you can't try and overcomplicate the dialogue at all.
right, exactly. And I think that's like the big difference, I think, with this show versus like Andor, what we were talking about off the top, where
Yeah.
it's like this show, I'm not expecting like some sort of monologue, soliloquy, or just, oh my God, like Emmys, like this should win Emmys. Like, no, I'm watching this because of the action sequences. I mentioned before in other episodes of season 2 and season 1 of the show where I'm like, yeah, this feels like more like a video game. Like we're doing side off adventures. We're just trying to please Star Wars audience with these type of creatures, with these action sequences versus like Andor, Tony Gilroy, great writer himself. It's just like, yeah, like I'm watching this
You're
because it's
watching it for
quality.
the development of
Yeah.
characters and
So,
like their actions, how it like
yes.
defines them. And here it's like, oh my God, did you see the practicality
Yeah.
of that monster?
Did you
Did you
see the
did you
Mandalorian come
see
in and save the
Grogu?
day?
Did you see Grogu do that backflip? Like, it
Did you
is
see Grogu
so
throw up on himself?
different. Like, I'm telling you, I was thrown off by the change of pace, and I was thinking to myself, how are these two shows in the same universe? It's almost like when you look at in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you look at the movies that are being made, and everyone always says the template's similar, the visuals are similar, right? The overall landscape is pretty much identical to every single project that they have. When
Mhm.
I watch Andor and then I watch Mando, I'm just like, damn, like it really does feel like totally different universes. And I prefer the Andor one as much as everyone wants the Mando one.
So like, God, it's so funny. So today, it's actually funny. So today on Twitter, movie anniversary, Zodiac came out 16 years ago today, right? 16, yeah, I think 16, yeah, 2007. And I'm like, oh my God, like this movie is unbelievable. I will be watching that after we stop this recording. Unbelievable movie. And I'm thinking, man, like the box office did not do great. Like shockingly, did not do great. Did not get considered at the Oscars, whatever. And I literally like, and then I go watch The Mandalorian, and I'm really thinking like Andor. Just nobody watched that. I just prefer those type of shows like Andor, those crime thrillers, those movies like Zodiac, the development, everything like that, versus like these action adventure shows like The Mandalorian or movies like Star Wars. I just do. I like that the complexity of them, everything. But at the end of the day, The Mandalorian is king. And it just
Right.
is because of the audience attraction to it. And it
Right.
sucks,
I hear
but
you.
that's just the way it is.
But like the commercialization of the Mandalorian is ruining the show. It's not, like, I don't want to say ruining, but it's harming the show. Like,
Harming is a better word.
because like
Threatening,
you're not
threatening.
trying to sell anything with Andor. Like, in terms of like, I'm saying outside the show, toys, like usually what comes with a superhero franchise or a Star Wars typical franchise, you're not worried about selling anything. You're just worried about creating a show, of quality show. Mandalorian has so many other dynamics going on for it that harm it, where it's like Grogu, we have to include it. It may not make sense for this story, and it may not be something that fits like the dynamics for all these characters, and it's not like really progress being shown for any of these characters, but we have to include him. and he has to do the thing. He has to use the force to eat the candy. He has to squeeze Babu Frick. He has to act like he doesn't know how to make a decision on his own, even
Yeah.
though he decided to become, right, basically a Mandalorian ahead of a Jedi.
I I'm in agreement. I just did my Zodiac rant, right? I'm in the same boat as you. But at the end of the day, like you look at the Oscars. Nobody watches the Oscars. But those are the best movies of the year.
Yeah. That's
On a technical basis, but this year's a little different. You have Avatar and Top Gun Maverick, the biggest box office movies of the year. Get nominated for Best Picture. Maybe this year there'll be a little more, but look at the audience numbers there. Not good because people just care about the commercialization, as you put it, which I think you're threatening or harming is the right way to put it. I think,
not
but
ruining. It's going to be an absolute dynamite show, streaming wise, numbers wise, all that.
right, and I do think this is definitely an overreaction. I'll speak for myself. Just the first episode, just the first one, but I just think that looking
And it
back,
wasn't bad for what the Mandalorian is.
right, yeah, I just think when I just look at the show in its entirety, it's like I look at what could have been, or just like in the universe, and then I also look at like I love it so much. I'm afraid, I guess, is what I'm saying. That's why I'm overreacting.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
But
And
I think we're outliers. I think
no,
that
yeah,
most
like
people thought
people,
this. I think
yeah,
most
but
people thought that this was like an unbelievable episode. I was on Twitter. I thought people thought that.
yeah, no, I think so too. But then again, like I like and also like the marketing of this movie, like oh, here are new posters for the Mandalorian. It comes after episode one. Like I just didn't feel the hype the same way, and maybe I just wasn't as locked in online. Yeah, so that's gonna do it for Mandalorian episode one reactions. But we'll dive into episode two next week.